My sister survived 2 hellish tours in Afghanistan, dodging IEDs and navigating complex tribal politics. But apparently, she couldn't survive living in American suburbia for 3 weeks without getting the police called on her. Picture this scene, because it's burned into my retinas forever. 3 squad cars, flashing lights spinning like a twisted carnival ride against the beige vinyl siding of my house. And there's Harper, my war veteran sister, standing on my manicured front lawn in handcuffs. The air smelled of freshly cut fescue grass mixed with the sharp tang of diesel exhaust, and that awful, heart-sinking sound of metal clicking as they cuffed her wrists echoed through the cul-de-sac. The crime? According to Patricia Vance, the tyrannical HOA president of Oakwood Enclave, my sister was conducting illegal military surveillance on our peaceful street in Fairfax, Virginia. This woman, a retired claims adjuster with a haircut that defied physics and a soul made of pure bureaucratic malice, had turned her clipboard into a weapon against anyone who didn't fit her vision of artificial perfection. But Patricia made one fatal, catastrophic mistake. She had absolutely no idea that Harper's military specialty wasn't just fixing radios, but something that would turn her little suburban kingdom into a federal crime scene. I'm Ethan Reynolds, a 34-year-old tech support guy who spends his days in a modest 3-bedroom ranch, trying to explain to people why they need to restart their routers. Oakwood Enclave is one of those middle-class planned communities where conformity isn't just encouraged, it's enforced with religious zeal. Built in 2015 with every house painted the exact same shade of whispering willow green, every mailbox regulation black, and even our community pond is artificial with plastic swans that probably cost more than my car. You can actually smell the compliance in the air, a mixture of identical landscaping mulch and the fear of stepping out of line. And every Tuesday at 9 a.m. sharp, the symphony begins as synchronized leaf blowers create a suburban orchestra that would make a dictator proud. 3 weeks before the arrest, Harper moved in temporarily. She's 28. An Army veteran medically discharged after an explosion scrambled her brain and left her with PTSD that makes fireworks sound like incoming mortars. The irony keeps me awake most nights, knowing that while I was safely at home complaining about lag in my video games, she was overseas getting blown up defending freedom. Our HOA operates like a miniature regime, with $85 monthly dues, architectural guidelines thicker than the Bible, and 47 residents who've learned that keeping your head down is the path of least resistance to our supreme leader, Patricia Vance. Picture a 52-year-old woman who treats rejection like a personal insult, always clutching her laminated rule book like it's a holy text, her white Mercedes SUV gleaming like a tank of suburban warfare, and you can hear her approaching from 3 blocks away. Tap, tap, tap of acrylic nails against a clipboard, the sound of impending doom. Patricia had weaponized paperwork, using her years in insurance to disguise discrimination as property value protection. Basically a bureaucratic assassin who kills your spirit with properly formatted violation notices. Day 3 of Harper's stay, Patricia materialized at my door like a bad omen, the scent of her overpowering lavender perfume hitting me before I even saw her face. "Your guest," she said, practically spitting the word while eyeing Harper through the window like she was a stain on the carpet, "has violated our 7-day visitor policy. Extended stays require written HOA approval, a comprehensive background check, and a $50 processing fee." I tried to explain that Harper isn't a guest. She's family recovering from military service. But that was a mistake because Patricia's eyes lit up like a shark smelling chum in the water. "Military personnel attract certain elements," she whispered conspiratorially. "Drug dealers, criminals who exploit PTSD veterans. My background showed me how these people destabilize communities." The way she hissed "these people" made my skin crawl. But instead of telling her to go to hell, I committed tactical error number 1. I tried reasoning with a sociopath. I didn't realize that Patricia knew exactly which pressure points caused maximum psychological damage, opting for death by 1,000 properly filed complaints. Meanwhile, Harper was making cryptic phone calls using military jargon I didn't understand, receiving packages from companies with names like Titan Security Solutions and Federal Compliance Group. And when I asked about her specialty, she deflected with communications and surveillance, changing the subject faster than a politician avoiding a scandal. Day 8 hit like a missile strike. I was barely conscious, clutching coffee that tasted like liquid anxiety, when the doorbell assault began. A postal worker stood there holding a certified letter so thick it could stop a small caliber bullet, with Oakwood Community Association urgent compliance matter screaming from the return address. Patricia had unleashed her full arsenal, demanding an immediate compliance hearing with accusations so absurd they'd be funny if they weren't destroying my life. Unauthorized vehicle registration, because Harper's truck disrupted aesthetic harmony. Noise violations for her 6 a.m. runs, because apparently combat boots on pavement constitute acoustic terrorism. And the crown jewel, unauthorized military equipment storage. The attached photos made me choke on my coffee because they showed Harper's VA-prescribed physical therapy gear, resistance bands, balance boards, foam rollers, labeled as a potential weapons cache, and suspicious tactical equipment. It was like calling a spoon an assault weapon, but then I noticed something that made my blood freeze in my veins. The photos showed the inside of my house, angles impossible from any public street or sidewalk, proving this psycho had been trespassing, conducting actual surveillance while accusing my sister of the same thing. The panic hit me like a caffeine overdose, my home office smelling of desperation as I researched until 2 a.m., discovering that the Americans with Disabilities Act doesn't just trump HOA rules, it steamrolls them into legal pancakes. What Patricia called a weapons cache was actually federally protected adaptive equipment, and my late-night research revealed that when HOAs mess with veteran medical needs, they're violating federal civil rights law. I fired back a legal response citing specific ADA statutes and penalties that could bankrupt the entire association, but Harper was transforming into someone I barely recognized, using abbreviated codes on the phone, receiving packages, and telling me she was just maintaining her skill set. She started conducting intelligence gathering on suburban soccer moms, building dossiers on our neighbors like they were enemy combatants. Mrs. Chun, our sweet 67-year-old neighbor whose dumplings could bring world peace, quietly revealed that Patricia once fined her $300 for ethnic cooking odors and foreign language violations for speaking Mandarin on her own porch. Harper's reaction to this was chilling. She just nodded and made notes in a small black notebook like she was documenting war crimes. The sound of Patricia's surveillance routine became our neighborhood's creepy soundtrack. Heels clicking, camera shutters snapping from bushes, but Harper didn't seem bothered. In fact, she started timing her activities, making herself more visible. In the military, we call this drawing fire, she told me with a cold, professional smile I'd never seen before. Sometimes you want the enemy to reveal their position. Mr. Henderson, the worried father from down the street, approached me shaking with fear because Patricia showed him photos of the equipment and claimed we were dangerous. I could see the poison working its way through the community, but that night I overheard Harper on another call saying, "Target acquired, documentation phase complete," and when I confronted her, she just grinned, not a sweet sister smile, but something sharper. "Don't worry, Ethan," she said. "I know exactly what kind of predator we're hunting." Day 15 arrived with the subtle charm of a SWAT raid, finding me in my boxers making breakfast when someone pounded on my door like they were serving a warrant. Through the peephole, I saw Officer Martinez, a decent guy I recognized from neighborhood barbecues looking uncomfortable as hell, and behind him lurked Patricia, practically vibrating with excitement and clutching her clipboard like it was the Holy Grail. "Morning, Ethan," Officer Martinez said with that apologetic tone cops use when they know they're wasting their time. "We got a wellness check request for your sister. Someone's concerned about erratic military behavior." Patricia stepped forward, unable to contain herself. 6 a.m. reconnaissance missions through our community. "Ethan, military-grade fitness equipment that could be used for combat training. We have children here." The way she said reconnaissance missions made me want to laugh until I cried. But Officer Martinez just sighed, reviewed Harper's VA documentation, and told Patricia, "Ma'am, filing false reports is a misdemeanor if this becomes a pattern." He didn't finish the sentence, but the meaning hit her like a wet towel. After they left, Harper emerged from her room with that 1,000-yard stare, checking her watch and saying, "Interesting timing, 47 minutes after my morning run. She's getting predictable." That's when she dropped the bomb that changed everything. Her military specialty wasn't just communications. She was a military intelligence analyst specifically trained in surveillance detection and counterintelligence. Her job was identifying patterns and building profiles on targets who posed threats to operations. "You mean like what Patricia is doing to us?" I asked, and Harper showed me a file that would make the FBI jealous. Photos of Patricia trespassing, time-stamped logs of harassment, and detailed notes on every interaction. In intelligence work, the target always reveals themselves if you give them enough rope, she said, organizing photos with terrifying efficiency. Patricia was desperate, sending emails to neighbors about unstable veterans and property value threats, accidentally including me on the recipient list, which was just chef's kiss perfect for our evidence file. Mrs. Chun and other neighbors were whispering in grocery store aisles, caught between sympathy and fear, while Harper mentioned calling people back at her unit who specialize in regulatory compliance because, as she put it, the federal government takes a dim view of people who harass veterans, especially when they document it in writing. Day 22 brought the financial warfare phase, a certified letter demanding $1,200 in fines for violations so creative they belonged in a fiction writing contest, unauthorized satellite dish, which was actually Harper's VA telehealth equipment, and improper window coverings, which were prescribed blackout curtains for her sleep disorders. Mrs. Chun dropped her own bombshell over Jasmine T, revealing she paid fines to avoid trouble because Patricia picks on everyone different, targeting minorities, the elderly, anyone who reminded her that diversity exists. Mr. Henderson had been fined for his walker squeaking, calling it excessive mobility aid noise, and the Garcias paid $200 for a small flag. While I was documenting everything, Harper's intelligence operation shifted into high gear, monitoring Patricia's activities with professional precision until she found the smoking gun. "Financial irregularities," she announced, spreading photos across our kitchen table like she was briefing a general, showing inspection reports signed by Vance Property Solutions, a company owned by Patricia's brother-in-law. There were falsified invoices for landscaping in a community with artificial plants, pool maintenance for equipment that didn't exist, and structural inspections for buildings never built, totaling $23,000 over 2 years. "In intelligence work, we follow the money," Harper explained, her voice carrying that cold tone I was learning to love. "Financial crimes leave paper trails, and paper trails lead to federal charges." She had contacted former colleagues now working in federal regulatory compliance because this fraud crossed state lines, involving interstate commerce since HOA fees were collected from residents working in different states. Patricia, meanwhile, was getting pathetic, vandalizing her own neighborhood, breaking sprinkler heads, damaging mailboxes, just to frame Harper, but she had made the fatal error of putting her discriminatory statements in writing. We assembled our team in my garage, which now smelled like motor oil and justice. Me on tech, Harper on intel, Mrs. Chun working the social network, and Officer Martinez's brother, a contractor, verifying the fake bills. Our legal aid attorney, Sarah Jenkins, reviewed the evidence with her jaw on the floor, explaining that board members have personal financial liability, and when they engage in self-dealing, they can lose their own homes. We were building a case for federal fraud, civil rights violations under the Fair Housing Act, and breach of fiduciary duty. My tech skills finally proved useful as I digitized every document, creating searchable databases and backup systems that could survive a nuclear winter. Harper's analysis showed $47,000 stolen over 3 years, money taken from families struggling with mortgages, and elderly residents skipping medications. We taught the neighbors how to use smartphone apps to timestamp evidence, turning the whole neighborhood into a surveillance network against Patricia, using her own tactics against her. Patricia's desperation escalated to full-blown sabotage, mysteriously flooding my yard by tampering with the sprinkler system right before a client call, and circulating rumors that Harper was planning violence. She demanded $1,800 in fines, or she'd file a lien on my house, but she didn't realize she was poking a bear trained in asymmetric warfare. Her brother-in-law started getting nervous, requesting cash payments, and her support network began to crumble as professional contacts warned her about federal investigations. The FBI Financial Crimes Unit confirmed the investigation status, assigning case numbers that transformed our suburban drama into a federal criminal proceeding. Patricia's isolation became obvious. her former allies distancing themselves, and the neighborhood barbecue turned into an awkward diplomatic summit where everyone knew something big was coming. Harper made notes in her black book, smiling that cold smile, telling me, "The target always makes critical errors during the final phase. We're approaching the point where evidence collection transitions to public disclosure." Then came the final desperate gambit. 3 police cars screeching into my driveway again. Patricia looking triumphant behind Officer Martinez, claiming Harper had threatened violence during a mental health episode. But Harper calmly produced audio recordings of every single interaction, asking Officer Martinez, "Would you like to hear what threats actually sound like?" She even caught Patricia trying to plant garbage in our bins to justify a search warrant, calling it a false flag operation. Patricia's subsequent emergency community meeting was her Waterloo, distributing flyers about military extremists, unaware that asset freezes were already hitting her bank accounts and search warrants were being executed on the HOA records. The community center transformed into a courtroom drama that smelled like industrial coffee and nervous perspiration, packed with 43 of our 47 residents sitting on folding chairs that scraped against the linoleum with the sound of approaching justice. Local news crews positioned cameras like artillery pieces aimed at suburban corruption, while Special Agent Brooks, a federal investigator, sat quietly in the back corner observing with professional detachment. Patricia Vance made her entrance like a deposed dictator refusing to accept reality, her attorney trailing behind carrying briefcases that probably cost more than my entire wardrobe, while she clutched a folder of evidence that was about to become Exhibit A in her own destruction. Her overwhelming lavender perfume couldn't mask the scent of fear-induced desperation, and her confidence radiated like toxic waste as she approached the podium, clearly believing this performance would vindicate months of harassment. "Ladies and gentlemen," Patricia began, her voice carrying the delusional authority of someone who still thought she controlled the narrative. "We are here to address the orchestrated military infiltration of our peaceful community." She spread photos across the table, Harper's PT equipment labeled as a weapons cache, her morning jogs as recon missions, declaring my sister a clear and present danger requiring immediate expulsion. My response came with the calm authority of someone holding a royal flush, presenting actual HOA bylaws alongside ADA protections. But it was Harper who delivered the knockout punch. She set up a portable projector with the efficiency of someone who's briefed generals, filling the wall with financial documents that told a story of systematic fraud. "Mrs. Vance has been stealing from this community for 3 years, Harper announced, her voice carrying battlefield authority that commanded immediate silence. The slides revealed everything. Vance Property Solutions billing for phantom services, the discriminatory enforcement patterns, the mail fraud, the interstate commerce violations triggering FBI jurisdiction. Criminal charges are pending with potential prison sentences ranging from 5 to 15 years, Harper continued, each word hitting Patricia like a legal hammer. And personal liability means your house, your retirement accounts, and all assets become subject to forfeiture for restitution. The room gasped as residents realized they could recover 18 months of fees. Patricia's breakdown unfolded in textbook stages, denial, bargaining, then pure anger. But the community rejection was physical, a bubble of isolation forming around her. Special Agent Brooks stepped forward to confirm the criminal investigation. Officer Martinez documented the harassment for civil rights prosecution, and the vote of no confidence passed 41-2, removing Patricia from her throne with democratic finality. Sarah Jenkins announced this case would become a precedent for federal prosecution of HOA discrimination. The silence when the fraud was revealed lasted exactly 17 seconds before turning into relieved conversations, the atmosphere shifting from fear to defeated corruption as Patricia realized her suburban dictatorship was over. 6 months later, the transformation felt like waking up from a bureaucratic nightmare into a suburban paradise. Patricia pleaded guilty to federal fraud charges, receiving 3 years in federal prison plus full restitution. And seeing her in an orange jumpsuit apologizing to the victims she terrorized felt like justice served with a side of poetic irony. Her white Mercedes was seized and sold at auction to fund a community scholarship program. Mrs. Chun is now the treasurer, running things with transparency that would make auditors weep with joy, and the neighborhood actually feels like a community. Harper discovered her civilian calling in financial fraud investigation, joining a federal task force that hunts HOA corruption nationwide, turning our drama into a national policy discussion. I even stepped up, finding confidence I didn't know I had. We recovered $47,000, creating a scholarship for veterans and making accessibility improvements for our elderly neighbors. The sound of children playing safely without fear of fines feels like democracy working correctly. So, here's the question that keeps me thinking. Patricia believed she was protecting the neighborhood, right up until the handcuffs clicked, convincing herself that her rules were more important than people's lives. At what point does maintaining standards cross the line into tyranny? And why do we give these little neighborhood autocrats so much power over our homes in the first place? If you're fighting a nightmare HOA, document everything, find allies, and know your rights under fair housing laws, because knowledge is power when authority figures abuse their positions. Drop a comment sharing your HOA horror stories, and don't forget to subscribe for more tales of ordinary people defeating extraordinary corruption. Justice is sweet, but freedom? That's the real prize.
Alright, and that is for today's videos. I hope you enjoyed it and found something useful. If you did, don't forget to like, subscribe and share it with your friends. Let me know your thoughts in the comment below. And thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.